Welcome to FF Uncensored.
Today is all about wearable tech. So I know we've covered this in the past, but we've made a few changes. I'd love to talk about kind of what we're doing, what may be helpful, what you like, what you don't like, and then maybe give you some insight into things that you maybe want to look at. Holiday season's coming up. Maybe you want to put something on the wish list for the new year. I love gifts that help us move better, eat better, and promote behaviors that we want to do more of, right? So like buying a new pair of running shoes, buying new workout gear that we love to wear at the gym. Like I think all this stuff really reinforces the behaviors that we want. And I think wearable tech can be one of those things. So I think it's probably first and foremost a good start would be to just inventory. Like what, for you, Ashley, what is the wearable tech that you are currently using right now?
Okay, this is going to be so... I bet ours are actually the same. So I have an Oura Ring. I have a Garmin watch. I have a Morpheus heart rate tracker. Those are pretty much my three big pieces of tech that I currently use. Trevor, are you using anything different than me?
I am not. So I don't use an Oura Ring anymore, though. I still have an Oura Ring. It doubles as my wedding ring, but it doesn't actually work. And so, I mean, probably before we even get to this, it's important to preface tech is information for the behaviors that you're making, right? Like it helps drive better behaviors, but it helps reinforce like principles that we're trying to instill in our life. So a good example would be like, hey, I want to get more steps. Awesome. Instead of just saying, hey, I want to get more steps, let's get a step tracker. You can even get a cheap one off of Amazon, or you can get a Garmin watch, or I don't like the I don't like the phone because it's not always with you. I like something that's on your person.
Yeah. So I would say if you're looking for a cheap activity tracker and you don't want to spend a bunch of money, Fitbit would hands down be it. You have lots of different options. You have color options. But anyways, okay. So there's tons of tech. I have lots of questions. Okay. So what is your favorite piece of tech and why?
So the thing I'm probably most jazzed about right now, or that I look at the most, it's kind of a tie, but Morpheus is probably my favorite one right now, just because it's newer. And so people that know functional fitness, we've used a company called MyZone for the longest time. And we adopted this 5-8 years ago. And MyZone is simply a heart rate monitor that you wear in the gym, and it displays your heart rate on a screen inside of our facility so we can monitor things, especially around like cardio. And we used it a ton, and I think it's still a great product, but we've really evolved from that, where your heart rate or how hard you should be working isn't a static number, right? So based upon recovery, based upon sleep, based upon HRV, a lot of different factors should shift your quote unquote zones. So most people think of heart rate zones as like 5 zones, right? 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, 90 to 100. Those are considered our zones, and those are based upon your max heart rate. Simplest formula for max heart rate, 220 minus age. Not a great formula, but it gives you a starting point. It puts you in the ballpark, right? So if you're a 40-year-old individual, your max heart rate is predicted to be about 180 beats per minute. Okay. So figure out what 90% of that is, and you can start figuring out your zones. That's how MyZone works, right? And then they start to gamify it by giving you MyZone effort points based upon the number of minutes that you spend in each zone, which I think is great. And it helps emphasize intensity, where you get more points with higher intensity, which is awesome. And it served us well. But I've wanted to move into something a little bit more specific for clients, especially around developing these qualities of longevity, which are VO2 max, right? Which is basically the rate at which your body can utilize oxygen, right? So that's typically, think about that as like the engine that we have, right? So the higher our VO2 max, the longer we can work at a higher intensity, right? So really simple. People that have high VO2 maxes typically live longer. Pretty straightforward. And then the second component is a resting heart rate. So a resting heart rate is indicative of being in better shape. The best endurance athletes in the world are going to have really, really low resting heart rate. So they're really easy things that we can track, we can monitor to see, hey, are we making progress? So I don't know how long ago was it when I talked to you about Morpheus?
I would say you did a podcast with Joel Jameson.
Yeah. It's probably 6 months ago.
No,
A year?
Longer than that.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean,
So
I feel like I've had my Morpheus almost since the beginning of the gym being open. So
yeah.
that we're looking at maybe not quite a year, but pretty gosh darn close.
Yeah. So I did a podcast with a guy named Joel Jameson, who's the founder of Morpheus, and he is one of the experts on conditioning, right? And so works with a lot of MMA fighters, works with a lot of different athletes, right? And so Ashley's showing you kind of what Morpheus looks like. So he created this thing called Morpheus, which is essentially a heart rate monitor on steroids. Okay. And so what it does every week is it gives you 3 zones. Okay. And it gives you a kind of a base zone, a blue zone, which is your recovery zone. It gives you a green zone, which is your conditioning zone. And then it gives you a red zone, which is your overload zone. And then it gives you the amount of minutes that you should spend in each zone in order to improve your cardiorespiratory fitness. Super, super cool. And those zones change every day, and they change the amount that you need to spend in each zone changes every week. As you get in better shape, it's going to challenge you in those zones a little bit more, giving you more time in those zones. As you get in worse shape, or if you get in worse shape, those zones will change, right? So we're doing the right amount of volume in order to improve the quality that we're trying to improve, which is kind of the holy grail of exercise, right? It's minimum effective dose. What's the smallest amount I need to do in order to improve the quality I want to improve, which then allows the rest of the time to be dedicated to recovery.
And they calculate these numbers based on doing an actual recovery check every single morning, ideally. So you're actually putting your belt on within 20 minutes of waking. You're actually going to put it on. You're going to lay down or sit down, depending on what your resting heart rate is. It kind of gives you in a range of what you can do. And it's going to take you're going to do like you're going to rate how you feel. You're going to put in how many hours you sleep, and it's going to read your HRV. And then it's going to calculate and adjust these zones based on your HRV, which is basically your recovery.
And it gives you a recovery score. So like to give you an example, my recovery percentage this morning was 76%. And the goal here is not to be 100% recovered every single day. We should be under recovered a few days during the week. That means we're training, we're doing stuff, right? And so like my recovery this morning was 76%. And it looks at your HRV, it looks at your activity from previous days, it looks at your sleep and all of your subjective scores. And so like today, my zones, my recovery zone is 91 beats to 141 beats per minute. That's my blue zone. My conditioning zone is 142 beats to 158 beats per minute. And then my overload zone is 159 beats to 182 beats per minute. And then to give you some ideas around my weekly training zone targets. So my weekly training zone target for my recovery is 200 minutes, 200 to 300 minutes.
That's so many minutes.
It's a lot of minutes. My middle zone,
50 to 225, and I think that's atrocious.
Yeah. So I've been using mine for a long time, and I try to hit these on most weeks. And so as I hit them, it continues to bump them up, right? And so my next one is my conditioning zone, where I have 29 to 51 minutes in my conditioning zone. And I just noticed this. My overload zone dropped this week, where my overload zone used to be a little bit higher, but this week it's a little bit lower. It's 26 minutes to 50 minutes inside of that, where I consistently hit probably about 40 in that one, give or take. So those are like your targets for every week, which is great. It's nice to have like, what do I want to hit? Go ahead.
And just so you guys know, Trevor's targets are really, really high because he's really good at doing conditioning. Like mine are not that high. So like know that they are going to adapt and adjust for you. So like my blue zone is 150 to 225. My conditioning zone is 15 to 27, and my max effort is 5 to 13.
So, your max effort is 5 to 13.
And I promise you I hit that every week because whenever I do a run, but I notoriously haven't done a lot of conditioning training, and I will say that like now that I'm really doing like running intervals and doing all of that kind of stuff, like I hit my conditioning way more often than I don't. But it also encourages me, like I have a lot of minutes in my blue zone. Do you know what I do? I go for a lot of very high incline walks on the treadmill now in the middle of the day because I need to move to hit those goals. Like, and I don't wear mine when I strength train because
neither do I. And you can choose. You could wear it and you could choose strength training on it, but you don't get minutes for stuff during strength training sessions. Only
Yes.
in cardio sessions or combo sessions where you're kind of maybe doing a strength cardio type.
But I will say,
deal.
like, if I was going to do like a high intensity or anything at the end of my workout, like any kind of energy system, I might pop it on. If I was going to do a max effort and, you know, I want to see how many minutes I'm actually in it,
Right.
I might pop mine on. No, I don't typically do a lot of that in my workouts these days. But instead of trying to get 4 or 5 days worth of strength training every week, I have changed that where I'm really trying to do 3 really good quality strength sessions. And then I do cardio on all my other days, which has been really nice. I actually feel like I'm recovering better, and I actually sleep better with doing more cardio. And
it's really interesting because like as humans we like to have targets, right? And so this gives you some targets. And if I hit my targets, like cool, like you're done. You're kind of done for the week. So some people might add a little bit of cardio at the end of their strength sessions where they can get, maybe they want to get 10 minutes in the green zone, right? Because they strength train 3 times a week and they don't want to have full dedicated days to cardio. Then they could just do it maybe at the end, right? Or even at the beginning. I like some intensity stuff right at the beginning where it's not necessarily very fatiguing, but maybe you do a couple conditioning things right at the beginning of your session, your strength session. And I mean, this isn't meant to be like a Morpheus like promotion. We like it and we use it, but they also have workouts that you can choose from. So it's not just like, hey, I got to jump on this and what do I do? It's like, hey, click on this, pick what zone you want to get some time in. Okay, pick the protocol in that zone you want to do, pick a few of the variables, right? How much time do you have? How many reps do you want to do? And then go. And then the thing's going to tell you, right, where are you at? All right, cool. You need to get to this heart rate. Go, get there, right? Oh, you need to get to this heart rate. Okay, get there. And it'll go back and forth, and then it just accumulates all of that. And you start to learn, right? What does overload feel like, right? It is really hard, right? Like it's working really, really hard for a period of time. And so I wear mine even when I go on walks and recovery type workouts because those are my recovery times. If I'm going for a ruck, if I'm going for a walk or things like that, I'm wearing it. I wear it when I play basketball. I wear it when I'm playing volleyball. I wear it all the time, anytime I'm doing like activity type stuff. And so it's just a really cool tool that I think can help.
And I'm going to say, like, while I am a big proponent of my zone really pushes you to get MEPs in that yellow zone where you get the highest amount of points for being in the yellow zone. But so a lot of people are doing that where really the majority of your training should be spent in that lower blue, right, style zone. And I feel like Morpheus gives you the encouragement for more light, light, moderate kind of activity, which we all need more of. Especially so let's look with the sedentary job.
Let's look at mine, right? I have 200 minutes as my minimum in my blue zone. And honestly, I don't hit that on most weeks. That I have to have a pretty dedicated week in order for that to happen. Right? My second zone, my conditioning zone is 29 minutes, right? Almost 10%. Right? Like 12% of my recovery zone. And then my high zone is 26 minutes. Right? So those are about the same. And so out of those 2 zones, right, let's add them up together. Let's just call it 30 and 25. So that's about an hour, right, in those higher intensity zones, and about 3 hours in the recovery zone. Because the whole purpose actually of the app is recovery. It's not actually conditioning, it's recovery. And so because recovery is where gains are made, right? You don't make gains in the gym, you make gains from the recovery because of the stimulus that you created in the gym.
And then the other thing is that lower, like the recovery zone that you're in is actually where you're going to burn the highest amount of fat. So that is like, I'm going to call it neat. And because you guys did send the email out today and I saw it, but like that is like non-exercise activity, which is a walk and those are things that are recovery that I think we're not really pushing and taking advantage in a lot of training programs.
Right. So there's that. So this is Morpheus. Data that feeds into Morpheus for me is my Garmin watch. So I've found a watch to be my best tool, and I use my watch mainly for one thing. Actually, I'll tell you what I use it for and the variables that I look at. First one is steps. I'm just always kind of conscious about what my steps are. I like a watch because it's always on me, and then I can look at that data over time. I know that on my cardio days, always get my steps no matter what, because I'm doing high intensity cardio for 30 to 45 to 60 minutes. I find on days that I coach, I can get closer to hitting my step goal. And my step goal changes on my Garmin. Sometimes after I have a lot of high step days, it gets stupid. And I'm like, this is dumb. I don't need to get 13,000 steps in a day. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing with yours, but
Yeah, I tell my Garmin to shove it sometimes, so I get
yeah.
it.
So I don't always hit my goal for steps on any given day, but I can look at the data and I can see like, hey, am I averaging? Actually, honestly, what I do is I have it all push into FF Coach, and then I look at my account there, and I'll look at a 90-day average, and I can see like, hey, what's my 90-day average? Because that's more important to me than a single day. Like I want
So
my
funny,
90-day average to be.
I do exactly the
Yeah.
same thing.
I think you can do it from the Garmin app as well, but I just
You
like I have my
can.
workouts and everything on there, but so I'm more concerned about that average. Like I want to see the average in that 9 to 10,000 step range. And I'm actually going to pull mine up right now. So I use it for that. I use it for sleep, but I don't actually like take a lot of like I don't make any changes based upon that. I usually use it for like the time of how much time did I spend in my bed type of thing.
I like that. I will say that I like to do I can program my running intervals into my watch based on distance. That is probably like now that I'm running, like Vicky gives me my program and it says I need to run 200 meters, but I don't have a track. Like I
Mm-hmm.
do, but like I need to do my track style workout during the week, but the kids are in school, so I can't go to the track to use it. So I can program 200 meters with this 100 meters in between, and I can put, and then I need to do this interval and I need to do this. I can program it into my watch and I can hit start this interval workout. It'll be your 5-minute warm up is completed. And then it will be like, do this. And then it's all
Mm-hmm.
set and it buzzes at me. I also use mine as my alarm clock. It's a
I do as well.
vibrating alarm
Yep.
clock. I can wake up to a vibrating alarm clock. I wear it to bed every single night. It is probably my most loved piece of tech. I got the Oura Ring to track more sleep and get more sleep details. And while I like it, I would say it's probably not going to last forever. I'll probably use it for a little bit longer because I got the information that I wanted from it. And we can talk more about like there's some cool things that happen in Oura Ring. Like I know that it takes your temperature and mine will tell me when my cycle is going to start. Like I can literally see when my temperature is starting to go up and I know that my cycle is going to start in however many days based on this start, which I think is cool. This is my most like Trevor loves his Morpheus. This is my favorite piece of tech. I will always, and I've used Garmin for a long time. Over other tech watches, I love mine. So here, cheers.
Yeah, I think Garmin is great. I love Garmin. They are a little more spendy. Like you're probably going to spend anywhere from $200 to $500 depending on the level of watch that you get. So it is a little bit of an investment, but it's going to directly impact your health because that data is going to drive you to improve things because now you have data to see like, hey, am I actually getting more steps in a day?
But I
You can
will say that it's also significantly cheaper than an Apple Watch, and I think
Yep.
feature wise for me, I need it to do more. And your Apple Watch has to charge every day.
I charge my
every
Garmin like
5 days.
yeah, I'm like once a week with my Garmin, give or take. But I do the same thing. I use it as to wake me up in the morning. I wanted more of a watch that was activity orientated and less like smartphone orientated. And so for the people that want more of a smartphone watch, Apple Watch can be a good thing because the Apple Watch can do a lot of the same things that we're talking about. But people that want more of the activity and maybe less of the apps and all of that kind of stuff, like I don't care about any of that. I look at my steps. I look at Garmin also has this like activity score or activity minutes that you try and hit every week that I look at.
Let me pull my Garmin because there's another one that I like on mine.
And then it gives you a body battery as well, which is an
That
interesting one. I don't take a lot of stock into it, but it's interesting.
I think that is probably one of my more fun ones on there. It gives you a sleep score and a body battery, and I was comparing my data from my Oura Ring to it because I wanted to see it. And while there's different features, mine I feel like they're close enough that I don't need an Oura Ring. That's really what it is. But the Oura Ring, the thing that I like about my Oura Ring is it gives me an estimated bedtime based on how my recovery was, and I do like to be like, can I push my bedtime a little bit tonight? Like right now my Oura needs to be charged, but it tells me my body clock where I went it is. So like last night I went to bed at 8:11, and then tonight my ideal bedtime is between 9 o'clock and 9:45.
What?
Yeah, right. I've never made it to 9:45 on a freaking Wednesday night ever, but I think it's funny.
So, I mean, I think this stuff is super interesting, right? And I think it's worth us talking about more. We don't want these episodes to turn into these like long ones. So I think we do a part 2 of this next week. We'll dig into some of this stuff a little bit more, why we've chosen the devices that we've chosen, yada, yada, yada. And so yeah, I think we'll be back next week and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, or we'll be back with part 2 of this. And we can talk a little bit more about fitness tech, because I think this stuff is interesting, right? And is the world that we live in, and I think it can help us drive the behaviors that we want to drive, because all this is leading back to how do we become like a healthier human being, right? How do we live the life that we want to live? How do we level up? And tech can be a good tool for us to measure that, and hopefully we use it in a way that doesn't become obsessive compulsive. And I think that's something we can talk about it next week too, because I think there is a fine line of like measuring and then becoming obsessive about something. So
awesome.
Cool.
Well, then we will catch you guys up with more tech next week.
Check out part 2. See ya.